Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you've not subscribed to our channel, please do. Here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, we are currently working slowly through the collection, The Stories of Ray Bradbury. We are up to tale number 67 of 100, which is Boys, Raise Giant Mushrooms in Your Cellar. The way these videos work is I typically start with a brief synopsis of the action and then wrap things up with my thoughts about what the story means, what I took away from it, what makes it a great Bradbury tale. So for that synopsis, Hugh Fortnum wakes on Saturday morning to the normal sounds of the house and smells as well. His wife cooking breakfast, his boy across the hall in the shower. He comes downstairs, go to the porch. He hears the sound of shears in the garden next door. He says hello to his 80-plus-year-old neighbor, Mrs. Goodbody. She's tending her garden, says good morning to her, and she says basically, "Ha, good morning, that's what you think." And she proceeds to tell him about all of these troubles with pests in her garden, as well as the impending alien invasion. Yeah, she's a little bit loony, but he thinks nothing of it. But just then, his boy, Tom, comes in. He's got a package from the porch. It came in fancy airmail from New Orleans. He's ordered a kit for growing giant mushrooms in your cellar. He found the advertisement in the back of Popular Mechanics, and he's convinced that he's going to make a fortune. He's excited. By midday, Hugh leaves the house. He's out for a ride, heading toward the local market. He sees one of his friends, Roger Willis, walking by. He flags him down, picks him up, and Willis says, can you play amateur psychologist for me for a little while? Because I want to share some things that I'm going through. And Willis basically talks about how things like dust will slowly accumulate on you, and you don't see it, and suddenly there it is. And I think he's speaking rather metaphorically, but maybe not. But really, he just seems listless and bored with life, and he's going through some sort of issue. And Hugh basically says, you'll be fine. He'll get over it. Whatever. So he lets him go. Meanwhile, back at the house, Tom, he's brought up his first crop of mushrooms. They look pretty good. His parents are sort of like, are you sure these are safe to eat? They're not just some nasty poisonous mushrooms. How do you know? Tom gets mad, throws him down the cellar stairs, and sort of walks away. But they continue to grow. And then Hugh, he asks his wife Cynthia if her intuition is good today, and he sort of tells him about all these weird feelings he's having, these things he's hearing from Mrs. Goodbody, also from his friend Willis, and she brushes it off, assures him that everything is fine. Later in the day, Willis's wife Dorothy calls. It seems that Willis has taken his clothes and vanished. She's convinced that he was taken because they had a good life together. There's no way he ran off on her. Later they get a telegram saying it's coming from about New Orleans area from Tom. It says, or from Willis, and it says, don't accept any packages from any airmail packages, any first class mail packages. It's dangerous, and this seems loony. But finally they get a hold of him. The police track him down, and they got him on the phone, and he swears he doesn't remember any of that, and he says that I was just on a business trip. This has been scheduled for weeks. I can't believe you forgot it. I wouldn't run out on you, but they're not quite so sure. Later that night, Mrs. Goodbody is still out in the dark, working on her garden, and she tells Hugh that she's fighting off a particular breed of giant mushrooms that has invaded her garden, and it's a species that all the local boys have been growing in their cellars because they're all gung-ho about this trend of growing their mushrooms, and they're all getting them from these advertisements in the back of magazines. Hugh concocts a theory that his wife thinks is insane, that somehow these mushrooms are taking over people, that she says, how could 6-foot mushrooms dial phones and send airmail packages or anything like that? But he takes it a little bit further. He says maybe they're invading the bodies with their spores like parasites. And again, she thinks this was pretty ridiculous. That night, he goes down to to the kitchen. He opens up the refrigerator. He finds a little bowl of mushrooms sitting in the on one of the shelves. He realizes then that Tom is still downstairs in the basement tending his crop. He calls down. He says, what are these mushrooms here for in the refrigerator? He says, of course, for you and Mom to eat. He's like, did you eat any of these mushrooms? He's like, yeah, of course. I had a sandwich earlier with them. And now he's getting very sort of worried, and he keeps calling down to him and talking to him, and the boy won't come up, despite the fact that it's the middle of the night and it appears to be pitch black in the basement. And then, so reluctantly, down into the pitch black darkness, Hugh, he goes down, and the story ends with that cliffhanger. So I sensed from the very beginning that this is a body snatcher situation. The mushroom thing first, giant mushrooms, growing them, and it's in the title. And it's sort of a sensational title. Boys, grow mushrooms in your giant mushrooms in your basement. It feels like an advertisement, but it also feels like it has campiness behind it. But between the mushrooms and people acting strangely that morning, differently from the way they normally act, that's a giveaway that this is going to be some sort of body snatcher alien invasion situation. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or its sort of awesome ripoff remake like The Faculty from the 90s. But in true artful Bradbury fashion, he declines to confirm whether this is actually the situation. We see people acting bizarrely. We see, finally, the main character going down into the basement, and then the story ends like that, and we don't get confirmation. I think that makes it better than it would be if the story continued and we saw the fight for survival in the town as these invaders are taking over. And really, that's the beauty of Bradbury, because here's a guy whose name is made on science fiction, on the supernatural, on the extraterrestrial, and then he does a lot of these stories where he plays with that expectation and he doesn't give it to you, which I love. But really, I think if the story has a deeper meaning, it is about boredom and about paranoia. People get stuck in their routines, their lives. They get bored even when they should be happy. They get bored with the happiness of a good life sometimes. And then any change in their behavior, because they're sort of lashing out and that they want something different, is seen as being wrong and bad and dangerous and something to be stamped out. And you have to call the authorities and give them a welfare check and that sort of thing. I think everybody in this story is sort of caught in their routines. It certainly doesn't help that the old lady next door is paranoid by nature, always talking about aliens and earthquakes and other disasters sure to befall man. And I find this all to be very, very relatable now, especially in the last 4 years or so of our world. It's older than that, but really things came to head with, I would say, both the twin issues of the pandemic, as well as the January 6th post-election nonsense that went on. It's a social media world. It's a 24-hour news world. We no longer have the days of when you had limited news sources, but they all had to be carefully vetted. We told ourselves that, these limited gatekeepers of the news are holding things back and not telling us the truth. And so we decided that we're going to believe everything we hear outside of mainstream media and professional media, and that's going to be the truth. And people got caught up in it, and they were given terms like alternative facts and fake news. And I feel like this story speaks very much to that in our present day, despite being several decades old. It's about people when they're bored, feeling down, possibly stuck in their home due to the pandemic, in our terms, and then they're willing to believe almost anything, and it becomes easier to believe with each lie and with each ridiculous thing, and the more ridiculous it gets, the less ridiculous things that are only halfway crazy seem. And I think within a space of a day in this story, Bradbury does a very good job of sort of illustrating how how it's acceptable to rumors like this and to theories, and he does it very, very well. I didn't check to see if this had been done as like Bradbury Theater or any of those episodes or any sort of adaptations, but I think this is a story that is ripe for that type of thing. So there you go, guys. That is Boys, Raise Giant Mushrooms in Your Cellar from 1962. Next time, we'll be looking at The Vacation from 1963, which is story number 68 of 100 in the Stories of Ray Bradbury. That means we have now reviewed 167 stories by Ray Bradbury on this channel. And next goal is to get to 200, which will get us through this collection completely. And then afterwards, probably going to take a break from Bradbury. Then I have to start hunting down some of his other stories because it's widely believed that he wrote somewhere between 400 and 600. I've heard other estimates closer to 300, but there's various lists online, but it's apparent that none of them are complete. So I'm going to make myself the Bradbury guy here on YouTube, and the lifelong goal here is going to be to review every single piece of short fiction by Ray Bradbury eventually. But again, we're going to take a break after we get to 200 and do some other things. So be sure to tune in for that. Please subscribe, and until next time, keep it creepy.